Okay, thank you very much for making time to join this seminar during this time of the year. I'm sure everyone is wrapping things up and trying to head off for your vacation. So thank you so much for attending this seminar. And just in case you don't know me, my name is Ricky Kwok, the so-called e-learning guy or MOOC guy in this university. But this is not about me, so I just want to let you know my name. Let me briefly introduce our speaker today, is Chang. She is what we call an e-teacher in residence in TELI, in Technology and English Learning Initiative, the department that tries to promote e-learning and different kinds of technology and rich pedagogy support and all that kind of stuff, which is basically a consultant for us trying to make use of her field experience to tell us what we can do more, what we can do better, and that kind of things. So we are very happy to have her today to share with a broader audience about her insights as a so-called e-teacher. You might have read her bio in the poster, so I will skip many parts of that because I guess she will talk about those herself. Let me go right into her background. She started an online English education platform by the name of Miss Chang Academy in 2017. And she has this very, very popular course, online course, of course, Core Concepts of English. So I guess she will talk more about that. And about Cheryl's background, she graduated from Harvard University in 2012 and worked as a secondary school teacher from 2012 to 2014. From 2014 to 2017, right before she started the academy, she experimented with and refined her linguistics-based approach to teaching English before finally writing her own curriculum. Her transformation from traditional to online teacher gave her much insight into the many benefits that technology can offer education, both in facilitating teaching and I guess more importantly, enhancing learning. So without further ado, Charlotte, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Charlotte Chang. Thank you very much for coming today. I'm very honored to be able to give this seminar today in the capacity of a practicing online teacher who has been running my own online education business called the Charlotte Academy for about a year now. So on this platform, I've developed an online English course for adults that uses concepts and frameworks from linguistics, specifically from the concept of generative grammar in linguistics, to teach adults how to analyze all English sentences systematically and to figure out and to gain a deep understanding of the core rules that my English structure. So I would really love to talk more about my course, but today's talk is about my journey into online education. So I'm going to focus on that in my talk. My journey into online education was rather weird and unique because I started off like Ricky, so generous to introduce me. I started off as a traditional school teacher in a school in Hong Kong. And while I was at the school, I realized that I wanted to explore writing my own curriculum and experimenting with this idea of using linguistics in language learning. And so I became an independent teacher while I was exploring this curriculum. And eventually decided that an online course would be a really good format to present my curriculum for my students. So in the talk today, I'm going to try to draw from my experiences, my rather holistic experiences in becoming an online teacher, because obviously I was an independent teacher without any institutional support or affiliation. So I had to do all the groundwork myself, from developing the curriculum, to writing the lessons, to filming myself in the videos, to editing my course, and eventually to launching it and managing it and teaching it, which is an ongoing process that I'm still engaged in right now. So hopefully some of my, so I'm going to spoil the ending of this movie for you, because it was a very positive experience for me overall. I kind of used a very drawn out endeavor creating an online course as a chance for me to introspect, do a lot of introspection and reflection as a teacher, and to really improve on and refine my course and my teaching approach. So I hope that some of the insights that I will share today will resonate with you, with other teachers here in the room today, and hopefully give you some reassurances and also encouragement in taking the lead into your own online education journeys. So I will start now. So this is a brief structure of my talk today. First, I'm going to give you a little brief introduction of my background and summarize my journey into online education. And then I'm going to talk about the period before I actually started creating my online course. I will talk about the practical motivations, intellectual motivations for me to take the lead into online education, as well as talk about some of the considerations that I had before I undertook this journey. And then I'm going to talk about the actual process of me creating my online course. I think as I reflected in my whole process of creating my online course, the biggest takeaway for me was the fact that when I created the online course, it wasn't just a repackaging of the curriculum and the teaching that I was already offering students in the classroom, but rather the whole process allowed me to upgrade my whole package as a teacher and to create something that was even more valuable for teaching and learning at the end. And finally, I'm going to elaborate on some of the rewards that I have experienced now as an online teacher who has finally, done the work and launched my course. I think as for the rewards, some of the rewards of creating an online course, I think are more obvious. So I think some of the practical benefits are more obvious, right? Obviously, teachers get to save more time, effort, and energy in their teaching because they don't need to repeat core content that adds no pedagogical value to their students. But I think I also gained a lot of rewards that were less obvious or even counterintuitive to start with. For example, one very important one is that I really noticed that I had much deeper interactions with my students on the content, even beyond the content, after I launched my online course. So I'll elaborate on that in the last part. Okay, so a little bit more about my background. Like Ricky said, I graduated from Harvard University in 2012, where I studied Germanic languages and literatures. So even as a student, I was very interested in foreign languages, especially the Germanic languages. And I was exposed to linguistics as an academic field in university. So even as an undergrad student, I tried really hard to apply the linguistics knowledge that I learned in my own studies to my own foreign language learning, especially in learning other Germanic languages, including Swedish. And I found very great success in applying linguistics concepts to my own foreign language learning. And so I thought, maybe other adults who have any level of analytical abilities can also use this more informed method in learning languages. So I really wanted to explore using linguistics to teach language, even as an undergrad. After graduation, I taught English and literature at a secondary school in Hong Kong for 2 years. But in that time, I kind of really thought about what I wanted to do as a teacher, and I realized that what I wanted to do was really teach English as a foreign language to adults, and to explore writing my own curriculum that would be based on linguistics concepts. So between 2014 and 2017, I used about 2.5 years to experiment with and refine this approach to teaching English. So I had a lot of private students, and I also taught a lot of courses, face-to-face courses under the name of Miss Charlotte. So that kind of became my brand in this period. And because my students gave me very good feedback about the approach, I got feedback such as, some students would come up to me and say, they had been learning English for many, many years before, and there were some things that they just never understood. And using the tools of clause analysis that I was teaching them, they were able to figure out some of their misunderstandings relatively quickly. And so I was really encouraged by that and started making these short language teaching clips to post on YouTube. So I started, that was kind of my first step into online education, creating these short clips on YouTube. And they were also very well received. And I got encouraged to really develop those clips into a full comprehensive curriculum. So in 2017, I started this online education brand called Charlotte Academy. And in 2018, I started writing my curriculum. I spent about 10 years on the whole, 10 months on the whole process, from developing the curriculum to creating the course. And finally, I launched the course last October. The course is called Core Concepts of English, and currently the course enrolls about 250 students. So I just want to spend one more slide explaining my language teaching philosophy, because I think it really underlies all my motivations and my considerations in creating an online course. So, and I think that, for an online course to be worthwhile for a teacher to create, it has to really help the teacher, make it easier for the teacher to reach their pedagogical goals. And these are my teaching goals, right? I want to show my students that actually, if you gain meta-linguistic knowledge of a language, even without a high level of proficiency, you can use that as a very systematic framework or basis to build your further proficiency on. So in the course, I try to use a systematic framework based in clause analysis to teach students how to analyze all sentences in English, and also to build their own sentences based on this framework. Okay, so I'm going to go into the first part of my talk, which I labeled taking the lead, because for me it really felt like taking the lead when I decided to go into this, take on this endeavor of online teaching, because I had not much experience in doing this, and I knew that I had a lot of strengths in the classroom as a classroom teacher, because I could interact with students on the spot quite well. And I had other strengths in the classroom, but I wasn't really sure how I could translate those into an online course. But eventually, I did it. So I'm going to, in this part, talk about some of my motivations in doing so, my practical and as well as my pedagogical motivations in going into this journey, as well as some of the considerations, also practical / intellectual, that I had to take before I really decided to go on this journey. And finally, I'm going to try to draw out some general points for other teachers in the audience as well, because obviously when I reflect on my journey, a lot of my concerns are very specific to the course that I was creating and to my own teaching philosophy, but I will try to tease out some general points that might resonate with other teachers as well. So firstly, I'll talk about my practical motivations in creating my online course. So I think the biggest practical motivation for me to start an online course was I realized there were a lot of inefficiencies with teaching my curriculum in the classroom. So as I explained earlier, my core content is basically a bulk. I had a lot of content that taught students how to use clause analysis as a framework to analyze English. And so there was a lot of content, a lot of terms, a lot of concepts, a lot of syntactical rules that I wanted to teach students. And mostly, these things were completely new to students, regardless of their starting English proficiency, because this is a kind of a more scientific way of looking at language, rather than teaching you vocabulary or words or things like that. So I realized that I made this little graphic to illustrate that. I realized that in a lot of the course classes that I taught, most people were completely unfamiliar with some of even the really basic concepts that I was trying to teach. So for example, the concept of a clause is basically the most important grammatical unit in my course. You have to understand what that is in order to build grammatical sentences, as well as to figure out how to improve and to correct your own mistakes. But I realized that basically no one had any idea what that actually was structurally at the beginning. So I found myself in the classroom constantly repeating the same stuff to each new class of students, and just, spending a lot of time hoping that they would, finally understand the framework, so that I could use the framework to answer their deeper questions about other aspects of language. And it's not just about the constant repetition, because obviously as teachers, we have to repeat things all the time anyway. But it was about the fact that, when I had a group of students in front of me, and none of them had previously used this way to learn English before. it took them very vastly different amounts of time to really internalize the framework in order for me to actually engage them in this way of thinking about language. Because all my students would have different learning speeds as well as analytical abilities. So it was kind of like a hit or miss every time in a classroom to hope that half the class would really get what I'm trying to say and then try to build on top of that. So I really wanted to find a way. I caught myself sometimes stepping into a classroom and hoping that my students would already know the stuff that I need them to know before I could use that to engage them in like deeper discussions of the language. And so because of these inefficiencies, I started to think maybe there's a better way for me to consolidate all of this core content that would be new to students and then allow them to access it at their own pace, as well as to repeat it as many times as they need before internalizing it and like engaging with it further. So that was the main inefficiency that I saw in my own classroom teaching of this curriculum. And secondly, of course, I thought that my educational, my curriculum had a lot of educational value, and so I wanted to reach as many students as possible. And when I started making clips for YouTube, I realized that I could reach a lot more students than in the classroom, because I kind of relied on social media to like recruit students, and there were not that many students coming to the courses at any one time. And so YouTube kind of opened my eyes to how online teaching could really allow me to reach a much bigger amount of students, number of students. Okay, so those are my main practical motivations, and my major pedagogical motivation, so my motivation in terms of my teaching, was that I had spent 3 years, basically, between 2014 and 17, really refining my curriculum and the way that I delivered it to my students. And I had really distilled out a way to explain this stuff to my students optimally. So I thought I had like a best version of the course that I was teaching. And students, because in every course or every new student I met, they would always throw me questions from every direction. And I developed the skill basically to use the framework that I taught them to answer all the questions that they would throw at me. And I got really good at it. And I thought, it would be really good for me to be able to consolidate all of this refined content, the content that I had distilled out over 3 years of teaching my curriculum, into one set of lessons. So I wasn't really sure whether this set of lessons would take the form of an online course, or whether it would take the form of a textbook or something else. But that definitely sparked my interest in exploring other ways of delivering my content. So when I thought about whether I should use the form of a textbook or that of an online course to deliver my content, I realized that textbook wouldn't be good because, like I said, there was a lot of new information that I needed to teach students and a lot of analytical content. So I thought that a textbook would actually be not the most suitable way. And I realized that actually with online teaching, I could retain a lot of my strengths in the classroom in terms of speaking and using verbal explanations to bring my points across. So I kind of settled in on the idea of doing an online course. And so, but before I actually started, I had to consider a lot of different aspects as well. And one of the first things I considered was suitability. So whether my course content would be suitable for an online course. And I think any teacher who was thinking of doing something similar would need to start from this consideration. So I was thinking, okay, my content and approach aimed at teaching students how to analyze English syntax with a systematic framework. So a lot of my core content was very analytical in nature. So it's more like, I think my course is more like a science or math course in that sense, rather than a language course that focuses on higher level writing or rhetoric or conversation. So I thought that this analytical content lent itself very well to being turned into an online course. And so I had no problems there with this step of considering suitability. And then the next thing I did was to consider the adaptability of my course, right? Because of course, for an online course to work, you will need to have very structured video lessons. And so I was thinking back to the content that I was teaching students, and I realized most of the content I taught involved explaining grammatical concepts and terms and syntactical rules, and I could really see straightforwardly how I would break down this content into structured video lessons. So that was also quite easy for me to consider. The only difficulty I had at this point was really with sequencing the lessons in my online curriculum because the tool of clause analysis, or like teaching the framework of clause analysis, is like a circular thing, right? There's no real start or finish. It's not like teaching the alphabet first and then doing something else. It's really a closed system. So I had to give a little bit of thought about how to present all of this content in a structured way. So it took me a little time, but I eventually came up with this curricular overview. So I started with explaining the grammatical concept of clauses, and then I explained the bigger architecture of sentences, so how clauses would link together to form sentences. And then I went into all the different grammatical components inside a clause. So I chose to structure my course that way. And in terms of adaptability, another big thing for teachers to think about, including me, would be thinking about the assignments and what kind of form they would take. So I think for most online courses, the easiest way to assess students' understanding of the content would be with assignments involving multiple choice, for example, because students can do them on their own and check answers on their own very easily. But obviously with my content, it wouldn't be that useful to ask students to do multiple choice questions because I wanted them to really internalize the framework that I was teaching them and then to apply that to their own reading or to writing their own sentences. So I eventually decided on doing a lot of asking students to do a lot of rewriting of sentences and like to read whole passages and then to parse them with color coding and things like that. So I came up with a way to allow students to really apply what they learned in the course while also being able to finish these assignments on their own and having them make sense to them. And then the next thing I considered, I think, was the workload, and I think this will be universal for teachers because for me it was the biggest psychological barrier to actually jump into this because I was thinking, even though I had all my teaching materials and the curriculum ready, I imagine it would take me a very long time to adapt all that into structured online lessons and then to film them and to edit them and to actually add all the examples and launch them. So this was one of my biggest concerns at the beginning, considering the workload. But here, because you have the support of TELI and a lot of experts with instructional design and past experiences, so it would definitely be much more manageable for teachers at HKU. And then, so those are my practical considerations, right? And then on a higher level, I also consider things like whether I would be able to grow through the process as a teacher, because that was also very important to me. I thought that if I had to spend 10 months creating an online course from scratch, from my existing curriculum, I wanted that course to be kind of a better version of what I was already offering students in the classroom. And so I had these questions, right? Would I gain anything as a teacher, and can I use this chance to improve my content and approach even further? And I think I was unsure about the exact rewards and the benefits that I would gain from this process, but I was at least sure that I would have, if I do this right, I would then have one set of lessons that would really represent the best version of me and my teaching and my content. And so that reason alone was my biggest motivation to undergo this journey. And then after considering my own benefits or what I would gain from the process, I also thought about my students. And I was trying to think whether physical access to me or like physical interactions with me in the classroom would really added that like a lot of pedagogical value for them in the classroom. Whether doing an online course would actually take away these advantages for them. And I thought, actually, thinking back to my classroom teaching, a lot of the spontaneous interactions that I had with students, I realized were not particularly helpful to actually teaching the course, because a lot of the questions I would get on the spot would be things about topics or or details that students misheard in the classroom, or it would be about things that I already explained but they missed or something. So I thought that with the added flexibility and with the accessibility of an online course, I would definitely be able to retain all of the quality of my classroom classes and allow students to really learn everything at their own pace. And I was always ready to engage with my students even through the online course. So I thought that they wouldn't really suffer from this format of learning. So overall, despite my doubts about adapting some parts of the curriculum, my motivations to create one set of lessons that would really represent the best that I had to offer as a teacher really motivated me to take this journey. And and then I also wanted to reach as many students as possible. So those were two of the motivations that really encouraged me to take the leap. So now I'm going to try to generalize a few points from the experiences that I just shared that were more specific to my specific goals and my specific content. I think that in terms of finding your motivations, I think for every teacher it would be the same. If you think that the content that you're offering and the way that you're teaching it is very valuable to students, then online teaching would be a great way to reach as wide an audience as possible. And I think that's very valuable. And it also helps you to keep your teaching experience fresh all the time, because once you have created a bulk or a set of content that would represent the best you have to offer, then everything else that you add on top of that to your students would be added knowledge, added value, added benefits, and it keeps both the teaching and the learning experiences very fresh. I think that would be universal for different teachers. And in terms of considering the suitability and adaptability of your course content, for me it was pretty simple to consider whether my course was suitable, because the bulk of my content was analytical, and so I could easily see how I would structure the course based on different topics inside my curriculum. So I think that if you really want to take on this journey, you need to think whether your teaching content would be inherently compatible with this structure of online videos, right? And if the answer is yes, then I think conceptualizing your course would be quite simple. You just have to have some support from TELI, and then you can easily structure your curriculum into different segments based on videos. But I think that for a lot of teachers, I also understand that a lot of the knowledge in your classes might not come from just the teacher talking. A lot of the knowledge might be generated from discussions or from other dynamics in the classroom. And in those cases, I would say that maybe your course is not inherently compatible with this online course format. But at the same time, through this process of doing this myself, I realized that there are really a lot of available technologies and strategies and tools that are available to teachers to really do the best with this format. So even if your course is not inherently compatible with this with online teaching, I think that there is a lot of potential there for you to explore, especially with experts in instructional design, etc. And yeah, like I said, considering the workload was the hardest part for me. It was the biggest psychological barrier to me, but I think that that is partly because I had to do everything on my own, because I was an independent teacher. So for teachers like you who are in this institutional context, I think that definitely the undertaking is manageable, and it's also very justified, I think, given the rewards that you're going to gain from it. And as for the opportunities for growth, I think a lot of the benefits that I gained from creating my online course became clear to me only either during the process or after the process. So before I actually started, I could see some obvious benefits that I would gain from this, but I wasn't sure, I wasn't 100% sure whether I would, gain other added benefits or what are the extra things I would gain from it. So I think my advice would be to be open to the possibility that the whole process itself and the process of actually engaging with students through your online course would allow you to really reflect on your teaching and also refine your content and delivery. Okay, so those are my reflections on the before stage of my journey. And now I'm going to talk about the actual process of me creating the online course. I think the biggest lesson that I drew from this part of my reflection was that every step of the creation process of the course allowed me to really refine and improve on my content and delivery. And in order for me to encapsulate the best of my teaching into my course. And I think that a lot of these opportunities are, again, not very obvious, were not very obvious to me before I started, but as I went along with the process and kind of like tried my best throughout each step to really refine my course, I realized that there were a lot of opportunities for me to do so. And I'm going to talk about them now. So yeah, overall, my biggest takeaway was that the whole process of creating the online course from scratch really allowed me this big opportunity to encapsulate the best of my teaching into the course. I was kind of prompted to really think through all of the times that I had delivered my course in the classroom, and really tease out all the best parts of my teaching to include them in my final course. And every step of the process allowed me opportunities to do so. So first of all, so the first stage of creating the online course was basically me conceptualizing how my curriculum would look in an online course, and it also involved me writing, adapting video scripts from my existing content in my curriculum. And so in this part, for example, I got the opportunity to consider each individual lesson that I was teaching, or each individual topic rather, because there are some time constraints to each video that you can put on your online course. And students have a limited attention span when they're looking at videos online. And so while I was given this kind of task to think about how to work around these time constraints of my video lessons, I was really put in a position to consider each topic very, very carefully, and to think about how can I optimally transition from one point to another, what are the things that were redundant, or what can I condense, what can I improve, what can I refine, etc. So at that part, I really thought a lot about my lesson, my contents, the individual explanations I would give on each topic, and really try to refine it as much as possible, without ever arbitrarily just dividing out lessons based on time span or based on time period. So that was one of the things that I could do in this stage. And also in the writing stage, so when I was writing my lessons, adapting scripts for my video lessons from my curriculum, it also allowed me to step back from individual lessons and to look at my whole course, and from that kind of big picture perspective. I think that when I was teaching in a classroom, for example, I had a lot of, I also prepared a lot for each individual lesson, but for each individual lesson plan, I was very kind of focused into that particular lesson, and very rarely did I step back and kind of look at the whole flow or the structure of my course. And having to really kind of reorganize and rearrange all of these lessons and write each individual lesson and put them into this structured curriculum for my online course really forced me to take this big picture perspective and to refine a lot of stuff, including wording or sequencing or flow. And in terms of storyboarding, so by storyboarding I'm referring to thinking about how your videos would actually look in terms of visuals, right? So you would have you talking in some shots, and you would have examples on over a black background in other shots, and sometimes you would add different visual and textual elements. And when I was considering this, I was really put in a position again to really think how I could maximize the interest level of my lessons for my students. So of course, like being an interesting teacher or delivering interesting lessons would be an important thing in the classroom also, but I think especially for an online course, because we need to really capture the attention of the students. So when I was thinking how my videos would actually look like, in the end, I was encouraged to do that, to really think about how everything would work together to increase interest for my students. And then the next stage was obviously presenting my lesson script, so actually delivering the lessons in front of the camera. And this was a little bit challenging for me because I had to kind of think about how to translate all the best parts of my classroom teaching and interpersonal interactions and on-the-spot answers to students into good on-camera presentations. But because it was challenging, it also presented me with this opportunity to think about, what were the times when my students were most receptive to my teaching. What was the one, turn of phrase that I used or expression I used that got students interested in the topic, or like what did I have a stroke of genius in one class all of a sudden, and then the students were able to grasp the point really quickly. And so I had to think through again all the times that I had given this lesson, and then really tease out the best moments of my teaching, or the best teaching instincts that I had in the classroom, and include them in the final lessons. And I really need that. No one will see your bloopers, in the sense that, because in a classroom, I remember when I was a teacher at a secondary school, during my first lesson observation, that was 2 months after I entered the school. So I was fresh out of college, and I was teaching for 2 months, and I had a lesson observation with my head teacher. And then, so I did the whole thing. And then at the end, he told me that I did well, but he also said, oh, actually, I'm quite proud of you, because actually, for a new teacher, it could be very daunting to stand in front of a classroom, because once you enter a classroom, it's all you. I remember him saying that. And it's really true, like in a classroom, when you stand in front of the class, you get basically one chance that day to do that lesson to the best of your ability. And obviously, we're all human, so you can never be 100% consistent with your explanations, or with your energy level, or with retaining interest of the students. And when I was filming, I realized, now that I'm in front of a camera instead of standing in front of a classroom, I was able to really, maybe do something or explain something 5 times and just include the best time in my final video. And that was very valuable to me, to know that I could just capture the best, basically, of my teaching. So I was always, I could make sure that I was always 100%, I was always consistent in my teaching. And so in this part, so this is the post-production phase of my video. So after I had already filmed myself in giving all the lessons in front of the camera, I also did the editing myself. And so this step really presented me with the most challenges, I think, because obviously editing video or adding visual and textual elements to a video were not skills that were there in my skill set as a teacher. So I had to learn all these things. But while learning how to do this, I also realized that with an online course, with videos, you have so many more visual and textual and multimedia tools at your disposal to really bring whatever you're trying to teach across to your students. And so I really explored. It took a long time for me to go through this process, but eventually I think that what I created at the end was better than what I was teaching in the classroom, because I was able to, for example, manipulate the text a little bit. I was able to color code different grammatical components inside clause. I was able to add these bracket things to show where clause boundaries lie, for example, in a sentence. And I would have them kind of align with my explanation, with my verbal explanations in the background. And students have given me feedback to say that these are really, really helpful for them to see how English sentences are structured, and to see that actually, despite all the surface differences between different sentences, some sentences having a higher level of complexity than others, but at the base level, they're all just the same. They all have the same types of grammatical components and are combined the same way. And then I included a little clip to show you what so I won't play the sound, but basically this is one of the last lessons in my course. I took this really long sentence from the New Yorker magazine and tried to teach students how to apply the framework that I taught them in class to parse the sentence, to analyze the different grammatical components of the sentence. And so I color-coded all the different grammatical components inside the clause. For example, blue is for a subject inside a clause. Green would be the finite verb, so the activated finite verb inside a clause. And then all the reds are the object phrases, and all the orange phrases are the modifiers in my clause. So I was explaining this in the background, and things change color according to when I got to that part. And I think this really helps with visualizing the structure of English, which is basically the thing that I was trying to explain to students. And this was definitely not something that I could have done in the classroom. Because in the classroom, I would usually, write out the sentence like this on the board or have it on PowerPoint, but it wouldn't be as clear because I wouldn't be able to kind of manipulate all these different colors and all the brackets, etc. Okay, so now on to the last part of my talk. So now that you have created your online course and launched it, you can reap the rewards of this endeavor. And for me, the rewards that I've gained from this process were both practical and intellectual. And I think the practical benefits are more obvious, and the intellectual ones are less obvious. But I'm going to explain a little further. So, like I said many times already, the biggest thing that I've gained from creating this online course is that now I know I have this store of the best of my content and my delivery. So basically all I have to offer as a teacher at its best form, stored in this one set of online lessons, and students can access them at their own pace. So this was very important to me. The practical benefit I gained from this is that I can now save time and effort on repeating things in the classroom that serve no particular pedagogical purpose because I'm just saying the same stuff every time to different classes. And so this really helped me solve the inefficiency, that inadequacy at the beginning that I found in my classroom teaching. And I'm now sure that all my lessons are always consistent, always refined, always at its best form. But actually this practical benefit of me saving time and effort as a teacher is really even secondary to the idea that now I have this golden store of my best teaching in one place, and then all of the added things or all of the extra things, all of the extra input that I give to students would be on top of that, would be extra, would be added. And that is very valuable to me as a teacher because I know that I don't have to waste any more, or not waste, but spend any more time explaining things to students that I wish they would already know, and then I can focus all of my energy on the things that that excite me as a teacher. For example, deepening the students' understanding of the content, or even going beyond. So, for example, this is a real example. All my examples are real in the next few slides. So this is a student who took my course, and this is the same video that I showed you just now. And he reached out to me through the course platform to ask whether he could also rewrite this one noun phrase here. The reaction she habitually tries to provoke an audience. This long noun phrase. He was asking whether he could also rewrite that in a noun clause. A noun clause being one of the types of embedded clauses that I taught students in one of the sections. And so I was very excited to get a question like that because it really shows me that the student really had internalized the framework that I was trying to teach them, and they were trying to apply it to deepen their understanding of this thing by manipulating the text. So I said, yeah, you can structurally both would function as nouns in a bigger sentence. So I told him that. But I also went one step further and asked him this question afterwards. To say, in terms of the meaning, what is the problem here with rewriting this noun phrase as a noun clause? So why did the author not write it the way that he suggested, even though it's structurally intact? So I was able to kind of move beyond the pure kind of the structural framework that I was teaching the students, and to talk to them more about expressing meaning and writing style, etc. And it was all because he has already internalized the framework that I was trying to teach, and he was able to understand my explanations based on using those concepts and the frameworks that I taught in the course. And so I realized that was, I basically fulfilled my wish before I started doing an online course of having students who already know the stuff that I'm trying to teach them. So now I can really use the framework to explore things further and on a deeper level with them. And also for me, I don't know about other teachers, but at least for me, always repeating the same stuff to students, hoping that they would get it quickly, also was quite, I don't want to say boring, but it was quite exhausting for me as a teacher to always have to be mentally bogged down by, explaining the same stuff to students and hoping that, this group of students would get it more quickly than the previous group so that I could go on to more complicated stuff with them earlier. And so for me as a teacher, I was very excited all the time to get this type of questions from students because it was fresh every time. And I could, draw on different parts of the course to explain these questions and deepen their understanding. So I was very, every time I get a question like that, I'm very happy to be able to add this value to the student understanding. And another thing that I realized after running the course for about 8 months, is that students are quite receptive to this bimodal learning. So by bimodal learning, I mean they have to first passively watch the lectures, and if they don't understand something, they have to rewatch it however many times they need. So they internalize the stuff as fast as they can, and then they can do the assignments on their own, right? And then finally, if they still have something to ask the teacher or they want to extend beyond the content of the course, they can reach out to me and ask questions. And I think that this switch from the passive learning of just sitting in front of a computer to look at lectures to eventually being active and formulating your own questions to clarify misunderstandings, etc. I think this is a very valuable learning experience for students as well. And they have, so far, from the feedback I've gotten, students are very receptive to this and think that it helps them learn. And so this also, when students learn fruitfully, then my teaching is also that much more valuable and exciting for me. I think that the online teaching format really puts students in a position to take charge of their own learning and to really feel the responsibility that they have to do the work first, internalize what they should learn before reaching out to the students. Instead of like in the classroom when I had many experiences with students who were very vocal, but every time they ask a question or add a comment, it might not necessarily actually deepen the class's understanding on a certain topic, right? It could just be a useless question in the context of the class. And with this format, I realized that because it doesn't make sense for students, for example, to reach out to the teacher after just watching something once, right? Like if you have a misunderstanding about a certain topic, you would feel the responsibility to at least maybe watch it one more time or watch it 3 times before you reach out to the teacher. And I think that really puts the responsibility to learn back to the student, and it really allows them to take charge of their own learning instead of just being a consumer of this content. And so building onto that, a lot of my students, after they have taken my course, they now regularly would send me questions and emails to ask about things that are beyond the scope of my core content. So this was something that I got, I think just last week. So this student, he saw this ungrammatical text inside this elevator at home. I'm going to read it. As informed by the distributor of the Chinese newspaper AM 730, full stop. Starting from today, free newspaper delivery stopped to our estate until further notice. The suppliers of the other Chinese newspapers, such as Sky Post and Headline Daily, but the last sentence is okay. It's mainly the first 2. They saw that, and then he took a picture of it and sent it to me, and basically, tried to apply what I was teaching them in the course, the framework, to analyze the clause structure of these sentences, and he tried to correct them. So he tried to rewrite the sentence to make it structurally intact. And so that was also a very interesting exchange that I had with a student, because I really could see that he has internalized the tools that I gave them of clause analysis from the course, and he had applied it pretty accurately to something that he saw in his daily life. And yeah, so this is just another example. Even now, I still I still try to put like updated videos on my YouTube channel to engage students. And sometimes I would just find a sentence from a newspaper that I've been reading and put it online and try to engage students in like analyzing the sentence with me using this framework. And this was from a few months ago. I put this sentence up on in one of my YouTube videos. The sentence is, on Thursday, May got Parliament's approval to ask the EU for an extension. And so this student, who is a very engaged student, and I used the old man clip art because he's, I think 70 actually, the student. So he asked me this question. Right? He saw the video and he asked me, oh, actually, why did you suggest putting this whole noun phrase, Parliament's approval to ask the EU for an extension, as the object noun phrase, instead of just having this noun, Parliament's approval as the object, and then with two modifiers. So in fact, both ways of analyzing this sentence would be consistent with the framework that I taught with them. So I realized that just by the question, I knew that he understood what I was teaching, because he asked a very sensible question based on the context. And so I typed a very long explanation to him and explained, actually, your way of analyzing it is also consistent with the framework, but here's why I would suggest doing this whole noun phrase as the object, because it would show the structure more clearly, since these two modifiers are actually also adjective phrases to Parliament's approval. So I told him, this is why. And I also drew on concepts that I taught in the course, because it's kind of impossible to give an answer to this question to him without him already knowing the framework that I taught in the course. So again, that was a very, very interesting and very intimate exchange between me and a student. And then finally, I think this is one of the less obvious things to me at the beginning, or when I was just thinking about doing the course. In a classroom, I'm sure you have a similar experience. In the classroom, it's usually the same type of students that always engage the most with the teacher, or they benefit the most from the classroom dynamics. The vocal students, extroverted students, people who are very willing to voice their opinions and engage. But sometimes thoughtful students, introverted students, students with other types of learning styles might also have a lot to contribute, but they're just not very comfortable with the classroom dynamics. And I count myself in that category. I'm also quite introverted, I think, as a learner. And so I realized that after I launched my course, I was able to really kind of like shorten the distance between me and some of the more introverted, more quiet, but thoughtful students. Because now everyone has kind of an equal distance to me, right? They can always reach out to me no matter what. So every student with different, all students with different learning styles and abilities and personalities could reach out to me equally. And it also takes the element of judgment out of the equation as well. Because in the classroom, as a human teacher, you always, have certain judgments toward different students with different learning abilities, and I've found that to be one of the advantages of running my course in this format as well. So. This is the end of my sharing today. I hope that some of the things that I have shared resonated with you as teachers, and I hope that you will now be a little bit more motivated or reassured in taking a similar journey on your own with your teaching and your courses. Thank you very much.
The arrangement of this seminar is that I was told I need to serve as a respondent, and I guess this is just to use me to buy Cheryl some time to take a break before addressing your concerns. So I took some notes, and basically I just like to make 2 points. And so while Cheryl is taking a break, and the first point is a little bit longer, the second point is actually rather short. But in fact, I figured that these two are actually questions rather than statements or insights. The first question is for myself, but I don't think I would have answer in any time soon. So in case after hearing my question you have some insight, some answers, please do let me know. The second question, the rather short one, will be for Charlotte. So I guess that would be good for her to take my question as the first one and then start fielding your questions afterwards. So my first point is, as I'm wearing this hat of trying to promote the e-learning pedagogy to teachers or even students, because students also need to appreciate that, so that the teacher will feel more motivated to actually do something like that. I had a question for myself, literally. I just did a thought experiment. I time traveled to 20 years ago to talk to the Ricky Kwok 20 years ago. The guy that started out as an assistant professor here. And the experience was super frustrating in that time travel, because the guy just wouldn't listen. The guy just, why I need to learn this, why I need to listen to you telling me this, online or blended learning pedagogy is good, because the value proposition is not right. Because although both these two persons are myself, and I can attest that no one told me that teaching is not important. But somehow I feel that the priority is not there. The priority is something else. So given that I just have 24 hours of time in a day, and it's a zero-sum game in an investment perspective, why would I spend time, like Cheryl has already shared with us, 10 months or something like that, huge initial investment to do this, to make the teaching maybe a little bit better. So this is my frustration when I talked to the guy 20 years ago. This same Ricky Kwok, assistant professor, trying to publish a few more papers just to survive. Right? So I can relate to that feeling. And so my question to myself is, what can we do to, if you allow me to use this word, to educate our teachers that this is actually a good thing to do? Because I did share my experience with the guy, with this Ricky Kwok 10 years ago. I told him that, I'm teaching 2 courses now in 2019. And the time when I talked to him was 1999, 20 years ago. I'm teaching 2 courses now, and these 2 courses are big classes, common core classes, and I do away with all the didactic lectures to online, and I use the classroom as quality time to interact with my students, to play games and all that stuff. And I'm actually, believe it or not, enjoying teaching now. But the guy 20 years ago looked distressed when I talk about teaching to him, and for good reasons. So the question I have, maybe you have some good answers, please do let me know. How can we educate or let teachers know this is actually a good thing to do, despite the initial huge investment, but you can reap the benefits afterwards, just like what I'm doing now. Because week in, week out, I just walk into the classroom to play, because I don't need to prepare any lectures. All lectures are in the video. And another benefit that Sharon might not have mentioned, maybe I missed it, is that now I get brutally honest feedback from students. Because when I look at the online data, it's brutally honest. Right? Students just didn't watch my lectures, and they came to class and do the work. which is fine by me, right? As long as they can get through the assessment. So why should we force students to listen if they can handle the tasks aligning with the learning outcomes and all that stuff? So this brutally honest feedback I wouldn't get when I was doing this, classroom-based teaching, because people are looking at me, but they might be actually thinking something else. Right? They are not actually listening. Right? I do this myself all the time. Right? So I couldn't believe these people. But when I checked the online data, there's no way for students to hide their actual intentions or behavior. Right? So this is another benefit. But still, as I said at the beginning, right, my question still stands. Right? Because I couldn't convince the guy, Ricky Pop 20 years ago, to believe me that, okay, now you're assistant professor, why don't you try this? Right? And he wouldn't listen. He just kicked me out of his office. So, second question, right, very short. Actually, we discussed this already, but I'd like to ask the same question in front of the audience. I try to catch one of your concepts in the talk. You mentioned about something like compatibility of subject matter with respect to online pedagogy. Right? So my question, again, as I'm a traveling salesman trying to sell this idea to different people, I need to be prepared to answer questions like that. Okay, Vicky, I'm not teaching science and technology. My classroom will not be as dynamic as yours, because I'm teaching things like psychology, no offense, right? But more discussion type subject matter. Would that be still okay if I do this online lecturing and classroom activities? I find it very difficult to conceive that I can do something like that. So my question, very short, is what's your insight about compatibility in subject matter? Can you give us a rough classification that I can tell people, okay, look, this is something that you might want to consider if you belong to this particular category. So with that, I pass the mic back to you and let you field the questions with the audience.
Yeah, I also have been thinking a lot about compatibility, especially when I was considering this aspect of my course when I was creating it. And then I thought back to my own undergraduate studies because, like I said, I studied actually German literature was my major. But because I was also very interested in languages, actually I realized after kind of doing a degree in literature that I was more interested in languages and linguistics than literature. In my undergraduate career, basically half of the courses within my major were literature courses, right? So writing, reading, seminars, discussions with the professor or with TAs, and another half was more like linguistics, right? So I studied a lot of general linguistics courses as well as specific Germanic linguistics courses, so studying the structures of English and German and Swedish and comparing them, etc. So with that framework, I think that the half that was more analytical in nature. So for example, a lot of historical linguistics courses talking about the developmental history of languages, those types of classes would be much more compatible for an online course, I think. Whereas courses that are whole seminars based on one novel and based on or reading 5 novels by one author, I think those courses would be, at least for me, it's harder for me to imagine how they would play out in terms of an online course and in terms of structured lesson videos. So there might teachers or instructional designers might need to bring in more creativity in those cases to help teachers create fruitful online courses. But it's also on the other hand, I think that one point that I mentioned before also is that you have so much support here from TELI and with all the expertise that they have in instructional design and helping teachers create online courses from their existing content. I think that communication is very important between the teachers and the people providing support, because at the end of the day, the online course should be a means for the teacher to reach their goals in teaching more effectively than before. So, for example, if I had to go through this process by myself, but even if I were to get support from people who have experience doing this, it might be, I would definitely spend a lot of time telling this person, what my premise is. I'm teaching English, but at the same time, I'm teaching English in this specific way, and I want students to gain, this meta-linguistic understanding of English instead of just expand their vocabulary, for instance. So if someone were to help me and give me expert advice, but they kind of treated my course or my content like any other, like the curriculum for another language course that they had turned into an online course before, that wouldn't be necessarily very helpful for me. So I think there needs to be a lot of communication and also creativity from both ends.
Any question from you guys? Please.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing. That's very useful. Can I ask, how much do you feel that you use more time to interact with the students now than you would otherwise have to do? And does that eat into your personal time? I think you have to work-life balance. The other question is that you did say that you now have a great storage of content.
Yeah.
But some of these online courses, you do need to update them, to be current. Mm-hmm. So can yours be updated easily, with whatever you have used?
Yeah, so the second question, easy. I can. I've definitely updated some videos before because, like I said, I was the only person doing all the checking also at the end. So on a few occasions, some students were kind of giving me feedback on some of the videos and told me, there were a few mistakes in the videos, and I was able to quickly change them and re-upload the videos. So with the existing platforms for this type of teaching, it's quite easy to update content. And your first question was about whether I spend more time now interacting with students, and definitely. One of the reasons is because I now have many more students than before. First of all, I have to interact with, I have about 250 students in my course now, and I have active conversations or active interactions with at least, I would say, maybe at least more than a third, maybe about half of them. So one thing with online teaching is that we're kind of always available to students because they can always ask you questions through the platform or on email, and so I am so the biggest part of my job right now is to really engage with students in this way. But at the same time, like I said, it makes me it makes me feel refreshed and excited all the time in my job now. Like I would much rather do this because this is allowing me to really engage with students on a deeper level and really bring new insights to them. And sometimes they even, they point out things to me that I haven't thought about, and it's very interesting for me to engage with students this way. Yeah, so even though, it it is quite sometimes psychologically stressful because I'm kind of always having to field questions from students, but at the same time, whenever I'm actually engaged with students, I feel very empowered, I think, as a teacher. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really admire the courage and dedication to do to try to do things. Sorry, I came in late. You already said that in the beginning. So this is a big course of 200 some students.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering the assessment part because how do you? Is it because just want to know the design and the structure because will we try to get the assessment kind of more formative way so that with a big class and how do you see this online learning kind of thing maybe support the assessment or make it more complicated?
So when I was trying to design the course or conceptualize it, I think thinking about how to create assignments that would really reflect students' ability, that was one of my biggest challenges actually. I mentioned in the first phase of my journey into online education. Because for my course, a lot of it has to do with asking students to kind of apply this linguistics framework to analyze English and also to build sentences from that basis. decided very early on that, the easy way to do assessments, which would be, for example, like multiple choice questions or things like that, would not be suitable. And so I kind of had to think through how to do assessments correctly. And so I decided I have many different question types, but all of them basically would ask the students to apply the framework in a kind of contextualized manner. So maybe they would be asked to rewrite sentences that are wrong in a targeted way according to what I was trying to teach them in a certain lesson or topic. And other question types would be like, taking a paragraph from an authentic text and a difficult text and asking students to apply the framework to analyze the different elements. And I found the assessments to be quite useful, and the students have given me good feedback about these question types as well, because on the one hand, I could provide them with answers very easily. So for example, with a text, I could do all the highlighting and color coding to tell them how to analyze it properly, and with rewriting, it's the same thing. So so I had to think through that, but it was I think I came up with a viable solution. And right now, for most of the assignments, I have available answers for students to kind of like check them independently. But I've also recruited some other teachers to help me kind of look at them when the students finish the assignments.
Yeah, I was just thinking like with your children something.
Yeah.
But now with the online capacity, it's also a really great to do it.
Yeah.
And even actually, when you're taking advantage, I will then you will no longer take maybe you can, or they will even way using this large number of data.
Yeah. So I'm not an expert in that. Maybe Ricky can tell you more, but I know that some people, for example, are looking at adaptive testing, adaptive learning for English as well. So I know that adaptive learning is a big thing for math and science education because it's all very content-based and analytical. But since in my course I'm teaching the language in this analytical way as well, I think that there are some opportunities for exploring things like adaptive learning, which would kind of identify weaknesses in students and kind of like guide them along in the course in a more targeted way.
Yeah, rich opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Like, it sounds like really it's a tremendous investment in the videos themselves. So how do you maintain ownership of that once it's kind of on the internet?
That's actually a question that I'm also thinking about right now. So at the beginning, I didn't really think about it because I didn't have that many students. But now I guess the course is gaining a little more popularity, and more students are coming in every day. I'm starting to think about that. So there's really no real way, I guess, for me to stop people from stealing all my stuff and creating another academy. But I was thinking even with the textbook it would be the same way, right? Like if you publish a textbook, people could also read all your stuff or make a photocopy of your textbook. I'm thinking about a lot of these things more now because of the popularity of the course.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was awesome. So I understand that you've been getting a lot of valuable feedbacks and questions from students. What is actually the best platform of interaction with students through online learning?
So the platform that I use is called WizIQ. It's a platform that's developed in India. It's one of the market leaders in the business of providing online learning platforms. So they have a very good feature, which is a virtual classroom. So I'm able to have these live sessions, Q&A sessions with students once in a while to engage with them actually face to face. So it actually supports up to 150 students in the virtual classroom. So it works really well. But mostly, as you can see, a lot of the questions that I got from students are actually text-based. So a lot of the time I just interact with them even through email just like back and forth, sending emails back and forth. That also works really well.
So one question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charlotte and Ricky. It was really, really interesting. The value of going online is tremendous, and I have kind of a circular question, and it starts with a simple one, and that is how to get started, how to jump into that circle of you've got the buy-in, I'm sold, I'm ready to go, I don't know where to start. I see it as a challenge, sort of that interface between an educational program that is a little bit more philosophically based, and then speaking the same language with the IT people who have that creativity of what can the platform do that I don't know that it can do, and then my content, how I want it to be delivered, but is that enough? Is that creative enough? So how to get the heads in the room to get it started, which then leads to my question that actually to answer something you said, Ricky, earlier, and that is how to educate more instructors to get the buy-in. And it's a cry for help, and I'd be your guinea pig if you want to do that, because I'm a program director, and I want to sell this to my instructors, because the program would very much lend itself to a complementary between being online and in the classroom, so that sort of transition between the two I see as being so incredibly valuable, rich, and tapping into the rewards that you said here. So I think really long-winded way of saying, how do you get started?
Ricky can help me. Yeah, for me, I kind of, before I jumped into it, I kind of, like I said, I thought about many different ways of solving my initial problem, which was I wanted to create one set of lessons that would be accessible to students. So I thought about textbooks, a textbook, but a textbook wouldn't be necessarily suitable for my purpose, because I thought that, a lot of the content I was trying to teach the students was complicated and also new to most students, so it would be difficult for them to grasp the concepts just with textual explanations. So I thought about, running an actual course for a longer term, so running a face-to-face course, but, with a bigger space and with more students. But I thought that also, there's a lot of content, and I would, if it's still in the classroom, I would also face the same inefficiencies as before. So I thought that an online course would be good for me because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier. And from that point on, I kind of did some research on my own. I looked at a lot of, because I was actually a student, like I took a lot of online courses myself, just as an adult, just for fun, just, on the bus, I would be watching lecture videos. I took a lot of courses on Coursera, for example, so I was kind of like learning a little bit about, how to structure the videos from other people's courses, and like thinking about, kind of like getting into the mindset of thinking about how to structure a course. But I think TELI can provide a lot of support in this area in terms of actually giving very concrete guidelines to teachers in terms of how they can structure their course from existing curricula that they would have.
Again. So let me supplement a few points. The first one being, Cheryl just mentioned, please be in touch with me and with my team, because we will definitely be super enthusiastic to get you and your colleagues started in converting some of the content into online, and even helping you to design your classroom activities. In many cases, we even go as far as to support your classroom activities, because we strongly believe in this initial investment phase that we need to use a hand-holding approach, so that everybody feels comfortable doing this, your team, your instructors, and your students, and then things will, be okay afterwards. But speaking of the more concrete getting started, like the online part, you will need to think about what kind of content that you want to put in online. And in terms of platform, we are actually doing a lot of developments in the features of the platform. Like students can actually watch the video while also interact with other students. So these are something that we are developing, and some of the colleagues like Richie here from School of Chinese is already trying to use that. So these are things that we will be more than happy to support you. And just to give you one more point, or actually the entire audience, about putting yourself online, I must confess that I also felt super horrifying actually, because it was really a super horrifying experience watching yourself in the video. And so asking your students to do the same is like trying to torture them. Right? So it's not something teachers should do. Right? But after a while, we get through that. You get through that phase, and then you start to realize that, oh, actually for lousy teachers like me, who is not someone super charismatic, who can elevate the energy level of a room like a super great speaker, video lectures actually make me look better. Right? So I come to this conclusion that after doing this video production, like what Charlotte said, the good thing is you do away with all the negatives. You just capture the 100% positive. But in the case that you are a super charismatic speaker, don't worry, because you can still perform, quote unquote, in a classroom by conducting other activities. So nothing is actually lost from students' perspective. So again, just please get in touch with me and my team, and we are super eager to get you started. Thank you so much.
In fact, I came to seek for help. I'm sure you're aware that I'm from faculty of medicine, but I'm referring to Chinese medicine. And I think recently with the Bao Institute, they're sort of like experimenting with the use of various IT-based both teaching and also evaluation. And they put OSCE. OSCE is actually our objective structured clinical examination. And actually put it online and in order to first of all, make it more standardized, and secondly, actually to be more efficient and save time. And I'm sure you're aware that now we have 250 students, undergraduates in medicine, but very few in Chinese medicine. But we need to teach the Western medicine undergrads Chinese medicine. And so it's actually a great challenge, both in terms of actually presenting it in a manner which could be understood. And you see there are two languages. Chinese medicine has to be taught really very much in Chinese rather than in English. And therefore, and also the assessment. So it's a big challenge. And also now, maybe colleagues may be aware of the fact that in the third year in our medical curriculum, this year is a year where we have the enrichment year, in which you could actually do anything under the sun. And so we are trying to see whether we could have a whole year of activity in which the students would work together with us in order to both be educated and to educate. So this is a learning and teaching process. So we would have the resources to do it. But in fact, maybe you could actually give us sort of a ballpark as to how much does it take in terms of time and resources and manpower.
In terms of time and resources, it's actually not much, because it's good that you brought this up. We have also developed something we call a DIY production station, and the Faculty of Medicine is now outfitting one in the faculty, and we'll provide training. And so you basically just walk into the room and teach the camera your lecture, and then the video will be recorded and it will require minimal editing. Now, of course, we can also provide some post-processing. So basically, you just need to teach your class once in front of the camera, and then you record it, and that will become a video lecture. So it's the kind of minimal effort in our views. But after you have the online video lectures, you will still need to design the new activities for the classroom. For that part, that will be something that depends on subject matter. But as I said earlier, we are more than happy to work with you to come up with that kind of design. But I believe a lead time of maybe one semester or maybe one academic year will be more than enough to revamp the entire year of courses in our experience. So that's a very, very optimistic estimate. Yeah, yes. Maybe one last question, anyone? Yes.
Lucy Jordan, faculty of social sciences. I was thinking, and I've always thought about this with this kind of thing, about the ongoing maintenance issue, right? So, again, I see very clearly with how you're carving out, what you're working on and how you can use that as a fairly static in a way, like it doesn't, and so that it seems to me like a lot of things to say around like research methods that are taught, standard things that are taught kind of at all across all levels of faculty or something that could be very amenable, to some of this kind of thing, but obviously things that are being updated more. I mean, it gets back again to where you're talking about the literature. So yeah, I guess so I'm just wondering about the comment, I guess from your perspective as well too, or yours, about this idea about the maintenance piece, because that's one of the things that I regret seeing often is that kind of that a lot of time and effort is put into these things in academic institutions. I've seen it here and I've seen it in the UK when I worked there, and then after a couple of years they become obsolete, and then like the sort of support, the resources kind of drift away, and then that seems very unfortunate. So I'm just curious about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I actually, when I was talking to Ricky privately, I was asking about this because I'm also, when I was a student, I also took a lot of courses that were very intimate, just a few students together with a professor and talking about a maybe just even one element inside the novel or something for a whole semester. And I also did the thought experiment of like trying to think about how that could feasibly be, created, produced into an online course, and how I could, keep all the valuable parts of it that are not strictly just the teacher, giving a lecture. And so I'm not an expert in this, but I think that there are a lot of new technologies that are being developed in terms of tools to harness discussion, comments in real time from students, for example. I think those types of new strategies enabled by technology would help.
Again, let me try to supplement a couple points, trying to address your question. I can see the maintenance notion at two levels, at least. The first level would be institutional level, like we as an institution invested in people, in infrastructure, in DIY station, in all that stuff, Moodle, or all these software systems. Would that get obsolete and people will not use it anymore, and it becomes a waste? I need to say this very, very cliche statement that this time will be different. This time will be really different because of the current generation of learners that we are dealing with. Like they basically live their life online. They expect things coming from online. So they are more than happy to interact or consume our content online. So I think there's no turning back now. So I don't believe, at least, that. Yeah, so let me try to go to the individual level so that maybe that will relate to your question more. As an individual, I can relate to your feeling that, okay, I invested so much time in developing all the content. Is that what you're...
Well, it's not even about individual, I'm actually asking you to be TELI.
Okay.
For example,
yes.
if you were to work, so I'm actually, we have a program director, and I'm really taking on a more senior leadership role in faculty and education. So,
if I wanted to try to push this forward, for example, I would need to convince people that if they're going to put the time and energy in, that there's going to be adequate support, to continuously update this information so it's relevant for these students that want to consume their information online. Yes. So it's not, I'm saying it's great, yes, we need to go there, but I'm saying it's not just about the creation, it's about the regular, continuous upgrading, and that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah. And I guess that's then more related to my first, interpretation of the question. It's the institutional level. And as I said, I don't think we can turn to the old days anymore. We have to keep going. Otherwise,
more resources.
Yeah, we'll need to actually put in more resources.
We were talking about this in back in my apartment the other day, just so you know, and we were talking about the need for, maybe like a person in the departments, right, that actually this is their role, kind of thing. So it's the idea that, because why should you or me, I mean, we're not going to be learning all these skills at this point in our careers, right? We're doing other things actually, but having somebody, particularly focusing on that, that kind of practice interface. Again, so yes, it is about institutional change and resources. So like, I'm on your side, I'm on your team,
Thank you so much.
It's thinking about how do we get buy-in? How do we shift, the institution that way?
Yeah.
Because I was asking because there's a lot of resources in the research. Because you see, with our institute, we are actually doing the study of, say, like a couple of weeks ago, we have a radiologist who actually got a research grant, and he's got one full-time IT person to help him. He has 60 patients, 60 cases, which he used to teach.
Yes.
Now, he has to turn that into the IT format of all the CT scans and so forth, and then you put in these questions and then the answers and then the choices and all that, and then try it out, right? So that was an experiment. So that was a research, and he was funded for it. Okay. Now, then obviously the next thing is, if this is successful, that has to continue. Try to have 60 cases this year. Right? Next year, are you going to use the same 60 cases, or are you going to modify them? And so, you need the resources. And the teacher may not be able to do that because we are not technically skilled in order to do that. It's not just videotaping and talk.
And that's part of what I was arguing in my department. I was like, look, it's dumb actually to ask me to do it, right? Because somebody else is it's like their role, their thing, and they're going to be able to do it in a way that I can never do it because I do other things. I think it's this idea about often, in institutions, they're like, okay, well, you do that. It's like, why? Like, why should a professor do something like that? When somebody, that has the skills coming from a different area is going to do such a better job.
Yeah, I agree. So let me tell you the current strategy is to kind of, you can conceptualize this as replicating TELI into faculties and departments. That's what we are doing now. That's what we are actually doing now. Right? So that's why when I mentioned about faculty medicine, it's very lucky for us, for HKU in my view, that the dean buy into this. So he pushed this from his level and let us walk into the faculty and try to outfit one of the rooms at the studio and train their people. So they would have the infrastructure to work more closely with the teachers. And what I'm doing now is to replicate this across all 10 faculties. The next stop that I'm trying to do the same thing is the faculty of dentistry. And then it will be faculty of medicine, faculty of social sciences, faculty of engineering, and so on. So I'm working on this, and this is the strategy, trying to make the availability of the skills down to the departmental level so that the professors can do what they do best. They don't need to spend time on this nitty-gritty stuff. So this is our goal.
So the most specific one, we know we have our own IT people, but of course TELI is more advanced with all the platforms. So if I want to start a course, so I can actually contact the TELI people.
Yes.
Someone will work well because we actually very slow on practical skills, even though we know what are important.
Yes.
But so is that really someone will work along us?
Yes. That's what we do for many common core teachers and some of the discipline courses as well. So please feel free to get in touch with us.
I heard about a video course. Is that one of the good things to recommend?
Yeah. It's a very good thing. It's a platform that allows students to provide contextual feedback while they are watching a video. It's like when they watch a video, they don't understand this, they can immediately type a comment without going to the forum, right? And the video will be paused and the time code of that instant will be attached to the question or comment. The teacher can see, other students can see. So this is a very, very good way to induce students' feedback while we are delivering content to them. And there are some other features as well. So we are promoting that as well. Yes.
Yeah, because that we have to go beyond our faculty because our own IT people about this video talks or, so we can contact.
Yeah, contact us. And in the meantime, we're also doing a lot of training and trying to replicate our skills and energy to the departments and faculties. But that will take some time, right? So please be patient. Thank you so much. Yeah. With that, I guess we have to call time because it's already 4:40 almost. Thank you so much for staying on. Thanks for all the questions. Thank you, sir. Thank you.